Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today I have a very interesting guest. His name is Garrett A, who was born in Connecticut, but he called South Florida his home for nearly 30 years. He's attended Vassar College and began his writing career on CBS daytime drama Guiding Light. Now, he's an Emmy Award winning writer, and he's had so much experience with TV, with writing, and various other things. And I want to welcome to my show Mr. Garrett A. Foster.
Hey, Susan. Thank you so much.
You know, Garrett, you wrote a very interesting book, which I've been reading. Now, I want to really talk about the book because it's something so important to you, and I know that people are going to love it. So let's decide what inspired you to do the book.
You know, that particular book, I just had a thought one day about an accident, and I started thinking about what would the consequences of that accident be, and what would happen if the people involved in the accident ended up being in each other's lives without sometimes even realizing it. And it just got my brain spinning about it.
You know, this novel explores the many different relationships that exist between women, sisters, mothers, daughters, friends, and even rivals. So what is the most significant relationship you have with another woman? Have you had a significant relationship?
Yeah, you know what? My whole life I have been surrounded by interesting, strong, dynamic women. And my mother, my grandmother, there are pieces of them in some of these characters. My sister was influential in my life, my sister-in-law. I've worked for some really interesting women. One of the head writers I worked for at Guiding Light was Pam Long. She was a really dynamic woman, and I learned a lot from her about writing. But, you know, I think it's just my whole life I've been so interested in watching women interact with each other and learning about them and from them.
Yeah. You know, Garrett, we live in a very difficult world right now. Of course, there are issues concerning politics and various other things like that. But you know what? Women are very complicated, and I think more complicated than men in many ways. Do you agree with me or not?
You know, no, I definitely agree because, you know what, I think as much as women sometimes get along, I also see a lot of competition between women, and they're the first to admit it to me. I have lots of women friends, and they'll be the first to admit it. I've seen it in the workplace and, you know, with personal relationships that I witness. And I think it's interesting, and I think what you have a whole other layer of emotional complexity that sometimes you don't see with men, you know?
Right. You know, it's very interesting. Yesterday I was talking to some people, and they told me that now the CEOs and COOs of companies are women, more women than men even. Now, does that have something to do, from your perspective, something to do with their personalities or with the fact that for so many years they were, like, not accepted? What do you think? Why is now women, I mean, and even a woman like Clinton, she was going to run for president, and do you think another woman will be president in the future?
I do. I think that we just, I think in some ways our country wasn't ready for it. I know there's a lot of reasons, but in terms of the workplace, I hear all the time that women aren't given as many opportunities as men, and yet when I look back on my work history, I had more women bosses than men, you know, right. And worked with a lot of women. So, you know, I don't know. I think that our whole landscape is changing so dramatically, and I really hope that one day we look at it as, you know, not black or male or female. We're all human beings on this planet, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I didn't mention the name of the book, and the name of the book is The Accident of Being Human. Now, what does that mean?
Yes.
I mean, how did you come up with that?
I struggle some. I'm writing a book right now, and I'm struggling with the name. And that one, it probably about halfway through writing that book, it just came to me. And really, what it means to me is the accident of being human. So many of the characters in the book, you've read it, they are trying to do the right thing. They think they're trying to do the right thing, but sometimes it's for all the wrong reasons, and there's consequences. And really, in the end, my belief about human beings, we're all human and we're all divine.
Yeah.
And I think we make mistakes, but yet, we're also divine. And and I think also the accident of being human, especially by the end of the book, you realize it's no accident the people that you come in contact with. It's no accident that we come into each other's lives. We come into each other's lives for a reason, and I really believe that.
Yeah. So you're saying there is fate involved here. You believe in fate?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm going to ask you why.
I think that we're so connected in the world, and I believe that our energy is connected to each other, and there's some people that we have a stronger energetic connection with, and I believe that those people will come into your life from time to time. You may know somebody when you're 5 and not even realize it, but they're in your life again when you're 25. You might not even realize the encounter you had, but I think, energetically, we're drawn to certain people that have another type of energy for some reason or another.
Right. Now, you have a little statement, a little quote from a very important guy, Leonardo da Vinci, and you say, learn how to see, realize that everything connects to everything else. Obviously, you think that everything is just meant to be. Would you say that?
I think that when you start to see, we are all connected. We are connected, and it's very interesting in our world, in our society right now. We have become so global, and there's a bit of a pushback for that, because I think people haven't been quite ready for just how global we are. But I think what we're realizing is we are all connected. We are all connected, and that when you learn how to see that, you realize the full impact of what that means.
Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. You have a number of different characters in your book, very strong characters. Yes. Tell us a little bit about some of the characters, and how did you come up with those particular people?
So the three main women in the book are Ivy. And Ivy is a head of a fashion empire. She's very strong but very complex. She's made mistakes in her life. She's paid for them. She carries around a lot of guilt and shame. It affected her marriage. It affected her family relationships. But yet she is not a bad person, and she's sometimes her own worst enemy because of the guilt and the blame that she imposes upon herself. And then she's one of the main characters. The other character is Annabelle, who's a young girl whose father died was killed in a car accident when she was younger, and you find out that it was Ivy who was responsible for the accident. So she, as she gets older and finds this out, engages Ivy, really wants to almost destroy her life, and get back at her for this. And the interesting thing about Annabelle is she turns to yoga to clear her brain, because her brain is really, whirling with all these thoughts and her anger and her, and she turns to yoga, but she kind of gets into the dark side of yoga. It's like she thinks she's enlightened and she's really not. By the end she is. And then the third character is a woman named Teddy, who is the mother of 2 kids. She's also involved in the accident in some way. And you start to see how she is related to Ivy and Annabelle and how they're all connected. And Teddy is very controlling. She's a hypochondriac. She always has to make her lists with her same Papermate pen. You know, I had probably the most fun writing, because she is funny at times, even though sometimes it's a little sad, you know. And it was just interesting. The three different women, different types of energy, and yet they all have things at their core. Family's important to all of them. They're all hard on themselves. They're all, in a way, hard on each other, you know.
Yeah.
But yet, by the end, there's growth, you know, and they do kind of realize and learn and grow, you know.
You know, when there's competition between women, it's what do I say? It's wow. It's difficult because you know, today people. They don't stay home anymore. They work, and they're very busy, always busy, and they're competing with each other to get opportunities, working for big companies, becoming doctors, becoming lawyers. And did your characters want to be famous? Did they want to be? Did they care about the things we're talking about?
You know, the only one that I think was Ivy. She becomes very much of a fashion. You know, her handbags that she makes are famous all around. Oprah carries them. You know, has featured them on her show, and you know, she has built up an empire. Her designs are in Macy's, and but even with her, I don't think it was ever with the intention of being famous. Actually, she kind of shies away from the fame because she feels so guilty about what she's done in the past that she doesn't almost want that adoration. It was more she needed a creative outlet to help deal with, I think, some of that guilt and blame and all the stuff that was going on. And early on, when she was she's sentenced to a juvenile detention hall for her crime, and it's there where she starts sketching, you know, her handbags and her shoes and different things. The other two characters, I think, are very content to be, you know, in their kind of everyday world and not really thinking about fame and fortune.
Mm-hmm. In your book, you also talk about the death of one of the husbands of the characters, and I'm interested in understanding how that affects people's lives. He was 9 years old when he died, and suddenly this woman, she feels like she's all alone, and how does she explain to people that she doesn't want to have any kind of relationships at the moment? She just wants to take it all in and think about what she's going to do in the future. Is this something that you have had experience with, death of somebody in your family or of a friend?
I certainly have had people in my family die, my grandparents, and I'm so lucky and grateful to have both of my parents here and my sister and my partner. But I understand. I spend a lot of time thinking about things like death and how does it affect people and what does it really mean, and I think, like, for instance, when Ivy first learns the news, I wanted to create that sense of it's like it's so surreal, like like you are in sort of a vacuum, but she sits in a chair and she just finds, without even realizing it, it's the chair that Jeffrey sat in, and she's dragging her fingernails across it, almost as if she can just sort of pull him back into her, with the fibers on the chair, And I think sometimes you realize you do things like that, and I see people around me. My mom lost her partner of 27 years, and it's been a couple of years, but there's still so many times where it's just very difficult to move on. You think you are, and then you're not, and there's those stages that you go through, and the person is here and not here.
Yeah. And, now I want to get a little bit back to the book. So what was your journey to publish your book? You must have had a lot of experiences, and I want you to share that with our audience.
I'd be happy to. So, I wrote. This is my fifth novel that I wrote. I started writing them just to sort of keep my brain busy, and then as I was writing them, I was like, oh, this is, I'm getting better and better. I was starting to get accepted to some writers' conferences, and when I got to this one, I had given it to a couple of friends, and their reaction was like, this is really good, And I thought, well, maybe I could do something with this, It had won some literary prizes and different things, but so I sent it to 75 agents. And I got back responses from quite a few. You sometimes you don't hear it all, or you just get one sentence. We're not in, But I got maybe 15 or 20 requests the full manuscript, which for an author who has not had a published novel, that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
And then their response back to me at that point was, you know what, you're a really good writer. Keep going with this. Somebody will want it. It's just not right for our publishing house right now, or our agency right now. And and after 75, I just sort of said, oh, I got to put it aside and go move on to the next thing. But I will tell you, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, and one thing that cancer, especially the second time, became my greatest teacher and my greatest gift. And it made me realize that if I want to do something, there are many ways to do it,
Yeah.
So I one day just had this thought to call Amazon. I know they have a publishing platform, and I started talking to them and found out what they can do for me and with me, and help me to get this book out into people's hands. And that's what I did, and I know it's up to me to talk about it with people and to get people excited about it. And but I believe it's a book that people are really going to like.
Yeah. I want you to reiterate something. I would like to talk a little bit more about the book again. And what I'd like you to tell us is, if you would explain the book to someone, what would you tell them? How would you explain all these complicated mix and matches of people who are, some are hypochondriacs, some are just happy being queer? I mean, how would you explain that?
I think it's life, I think all of us know people that when you really start looking at all of us, we have such interesting stories and such interesting lives, But honestly, this book is, if I had to sum it up, it's about 3 women that are connected by 2 accidents that take place 25 years apart, and it really is about a lifetime of lives, but it's also about truth and discovery, and I'm always fascinated when I read or watch things that are about like sort of a 6 degrees of separation. Because of that, I think that what we were talking about earlier, where I feel like we are all connected. You don't realize when you do something here how it can impact somebody over there, that you come and cross their path 5 years from now or 1 year from now. And that was the story, but it really became, as I started writing it, as what happens when I write a lot, the characters start taking on a life of their own, and start doing things I never thought they would do, But it's like, okay, if they want to take me there, I'll go with them,
Of course, why not? Now, Garrett, let's get back to you a little bit. You won an Emmy Award for writing the daytime drama Guiding Light. That must have been a great experience for you.
It was so amazing. It was, I was raised by, again, all the women in my family. My grandma, my mother, my sister loved soap operas. I would come home from high school and just be like, why are these on? I remember distinctly one day with my sister, we had one of those cable boxes that have the 2 rows of buttons on them, and she wanted to watch Guiding Light, and I was like, I wanted to watch anything but that, and we're like in this, struggle over the cable box, And then I hear this dialogue, and I remember it was a character named Roger Thorpe on Guiding Light, and I just thought, this is really good, And I started getting fascinated with like soap opera. And when I went to college, I studied the soap opera format of, if I had a sociology class, I would kind of work in, how daytime TV affects people in society. And I had a goal and a dream to work for a soap and to win an Emmy, So I interned at As the World Turns while I was in college, and through that, met the head writer of that show, and he was the head writer who had created Luke and Laura over in General Hospital, and he was a big idol of mine. And then I went on to work and write for Pam and Guiding Light.
Yeah. As you talk about the Guiding Light, I think of my grandmother. My grandmother lived for those shows. She watched them every single day, and you know what I used to say to myself? If you started at the beginning, you didn't have to watch the second or the third, because if you tuned in to the fourth one, it just it's like you watched them already. They just
it is, and yet there's something about them that just pull into people and make them keep watching day after day after day.
Well, is it?
And when I write, I am influenced by my daytime background, because I do have like sometimes little twists and turns, and I think in terms of pacing a novel, like leaving a cliffhanger at the end of a chapter, something that's going to make you want to turn to the next, almost like tune in for the next episode,
Right. And isn't that like what's happening now on Netflix with all the series that are going on? I mean, there are major series on Netflix, and people are just addicted to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's really just another kind of soap opera,
That's right. It's a different kind of soap opera. Has it evolved? Is it different from the way it was when you did it, or is it just a similar process?
I think it's a similar process. I think, it boils down to, in the end, you have to have compelling characters, and they have to be characters that have heart. They have to be characters, even if they're not the nicest characters, that there's something about them that you go, I relate to that. It's like, even if I don't want to admit it, I'm kind of like that sometimes, or, and if you can create, I think that's where it starts, with compelling characters. And, in a good story, something that's going to kind of keep you guessing throughout the story.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like the process, while it probably is hard, it can be an amazing experience. Now, for people who want to publish a book, what would you suggest they do, and how did they find out more about it by speaking to you? Can they reach you, and would you give them the information?
Oh yeah, I would love that. It's they can call me, they can reach out to me. I'm very accessible, and I love to help people, because I know what it's like to be out there. I think there are so many writers and artists of all kinds out there that are working hard to try to get their stories out or their work out, and it's not easy in today's world with all the competition, and a lot of publishing houses aren't, bookstores aren't even around anymore. It's Amazon, largely. And but here's what I would say: look into local writers groups. I've joined writers groups that have been invaluable to me. Check out if there's any conferences nearby, or even that you can travel to and go to, because they're a great way to make contacts and to meet other writers and kind of get in the groove of how writers think and what the writing life is like. And then the other thing I would say is just write as much as you can. It's like, to me, I love it so much that I can't not write. There are days here and there where time just doesn't allow it, but when I can, I'm writing.
Yeah. Garrett can be reached at garrettfoster@comcast.net. And I want everybody in the audience to keep up with his latest projects and look at his website, which is www.garrettfosterwriter.com. What I want you to tell us is, I always give my guests the last word. So what is your last word for our audience?
Grateful.
Grateful. Wow, that's just one word, and it says it all. Well, today my guest has been Garrett Foster, a person who's won an Emmy Award for writing daytime drama, The Guiding Light, and now his newest book, which is called The Accident of Being Human. I want to thank you for being on the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.